All right, welcome. This is Web Apps with Heroku Connect. My name is Tom Gersick. I'm Director of Mobile Services within Salesforce Services. We're the professional services arm of Salesforce, so my team builds mobile apps, mobile websites, all that sort of thing for Salesforce customers. Many like yourself. If you have questions afterwards, feel free to ask. Feel free to come up to the mic or come up here and ask. Or you can always reach me on Twitter at @TomGersick. Safe harbor. If I say anything forward-looking or if I outright lie to you, don't buy based on that. Okay, so what are we going to do here today? First off, I'm going to show what we'll be building and kind of what the code is that we can walk through. I'll talk a little bit about an architectural overview of how I kind of structured the mobile website with Heroku Connect and Salesforce. We'll talk a little bit about the technology stack of the mobile website itself. I'll show Heroku Connect for those of you who haven't seen it and how it's kind of set up so you can see how easy it is to use. We'll do a code walkthrough and then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A. All right, show of hands. How many people have had this thought? You want to use Heroku, you have some reason to use it, but your customer data is in Salesforce, you're not sure how to do it. All right, so I'm not alone, right? Okay, this is the app. It's a mobile website. You can get it yourself at github.com/TomGersick/baconforce. It's a bacon ordering system. Definitely the sort of thing that everybody needs on Salesforce. So let me just do a quick demo of what it is. This is it. Like I said, the code is all on GitHub. You can actually go to this website too if you want. It's optimized for mobile web. It's not really intended for browser, so that's why it's kind of small down the middle. But you can get to it at baconforce.herokuapp.com. As you can see, I'm already logged in here up at the top right. I'll go to a different browser. I can kind of show I'm using communities licenses in order to authenticate with this website so that I can place orders. You don't have to use communities. You could use regular native force.com licenses, or you don't even have to use licenses at all. But this particular use case is using Salesforce communities in order to use Salesforce as the IDP for authentication. So if I want to log in, I can click up here and click sign in. It's going to use OAuth 2 to redirect the server-to-server flow. Will redirect me to log in here. And I'm going to log in as Tom at baconforce1.com. And you can see I've logged in. So that's sort of how authentication is being handled. It's all with Salesforce OAuth 2. Actually pretty easy to set up. And then if I go through an order, it's a simple app. If I want 3 bacon baby formulas, 2 bacon tacos, 4 bacon soaps, and 5 bacon bandages, because why wouldn't you? You hit order now, and we can see a little pop-up toast down there at the bottom says my order has been placed. Now what that actually did is that actually wrote that order, and it got actually all this information from Postgres within Heroku. And then I'm actually using Heroku Connect to then sync that data back to Salesforce. And we'll walk through all that in just 1 second. So this is the architecture. I think you can see it. Yep. So like I said, I'm using Postgres for the database, kind of production web database, and I'm using Salesforce for identity management with connected apps and customer communities licenses, and then that Heroku Connect layer to move the data back and forth between Postgres and Salesforce, so that I have my customer data being synced down to Postgres, and I have my order data being synced from Postgres back up to Salesforce. So why would I even want to do this? I mean, you could just use sites, you could use customer communities. The communities product, as Lightning's coming out, you could use that. Why would I want to use Heroku Connect? I think there's a number of reasons. One, maybe I want to write the app in Ruby or Node or PHP or Java, or maybe I have an app already written in that, whether it's an in-house app or I want to use a CMS like WordPress or Drupal. There's kind of native on the platform CMSs out there, but it's kind of hard to beat WordPress. I mean, it's got a lot of plugins and it's got a lot of usage. So maybe I want to host WordPress. Maybe I don't want to worry about API limits. Maybe I want to, or I need the performance of Postgres. You know, I mean, Postgres probably the closest thing open source you can get to an Oracle database. So I need that, the robust performance of Postgres web app. So the overall kind of stack that I'm using here, I have Postgres under the scenes, and I'm using Node.js to create an API. I'm developing this API first. Everybody heard of API first as kind of a concept? Raise your hand. All right, there we go. A couple people have heard of API first. Great. So how I'm doing this, basically, I'll show just a quick dummy API that's basically say hello, and it says hello world. And you can do this on the same web app here. Sorry, I'll zoom in a little bit. At baconforce.herokuapp.com. And the way I'm doing this is I'm using Express with Node.js, which makes it really easy to create APIs. So right here is where I have the API that I want, which is say hello, and what it's going to send back to the browser is just hello world. Real simple. Obviously, that's not integral to this app whatsoever. It's just a demonstration of how you would create the API first before you're building the app that's going to consume, the web app that's going to consume that API. So what I'm actually using is I have a products endpoint that gives me JSON data back, and it's querying, whoops, zoom in a little less. It's querying the Postgres database using regular SQL and parsing back that information as a JSON document that's then served up with an API. And it's pretty simple to create this. If I look at my products, there we go. Again, using Express and Node.js, I have app.get, excuse me, /products. And then my response is actually going to connect to Postgres using the database URL stored in Heroku. And then it's just issuing a very simple SQL query, select star from Salesforce.product2, and parsing that back out to the client, the web browser. Now, the user's never actually obviously going to be using that products endpoint. It's the web app that's actually going to be querying that. So that's the concept of API first. I've developed an API. Now I'm going to develop a web app that can actually use that information. Sometime later, I could develop a different app or a mobile app or something that would use that same API to get access to the information that I need. I also have a user's endpoint. Oops. Thought it was users. Nope. That gives me all of my user information that I need in order to authenticate. So that's how I'm getting display name. When I go back to the web app itself, that's where it's getting Tom Gersick to put up on the right-hand side. And then the products are obviously being shown here. So what about the front end? The front end is obviously how I'm going to develop what the user's going to see that then queries the API that then displays the information in the way that I want to show it. And how I use this, I use Google Polymer. Polymer is pretty cool. It's a new technology. It's in developer preview. It's put out by Google, obviously, with the name. And the reason I use Google Polymer is because it implements something new that's not implemented in all browsers yet. They're called custom web components. Everybody's familiar with the HTML like div tag, the body tag, the A tag, the standard HTML components we've all been using for the last 20 or so years. What custom web components are, it's an HTML5 spec that allows you to define whatever web component you want. So it doesn't have to be the div tag or the HTML tag. You can call it, the Tom tag or the Salesforce tag. So in here I have the my element tag. And you can actually see this very, very simply, kind of taking it out of the context of the app. If I look at this Hello World app, and you can see here what it actually will look like in the browser. It shows a button, which is a standard Google Polymer component, and then it shows Hello World. What Polymer does is it implements these custom web components in browsers that have not implemented them yet. So everybody's kind of familiar with HTML5, the W3C. Just because the W3C says there's a standard doesn't mean all the browsers have supported it yet. Chrome has, and that's why Google wants to get people using web components. And what they've done is created what's called a polyfill for the other browsers, which means that they've implemented web components in JavaScript for browsers that have not yet supported it. Safari, mobile Safari, the Android browser on older Android devices that aren't using Chrome yet, which enables you to use web components on browsers that don't technically support web components. It's great. So you can see how they work here. This is just a basic index.html page. paper button is that button that we just showed. That's the standard Polymer component. It's already defined. You don't have to do anything to get it. And then I've created my own component here just called Hello World. And I'm passing in a who of world, and then I'm, of course, closing my custom tag. And it's defined in this hello world.html file that's imported into the index.html. And it's a template, so it's reusable, right? It's something that I could put 3 of them in a row. I could use it somewhere else in the app. That's the great thing about componentizing. And that's what Polymer gives you. It gives you the ability to componentize the logic and the views that you're working with. So the template that I'm going to be using and reusing is basically just hello. The 2 brackets are very much like Angular.js, where it has a variable being defined by those 2 brackets, and then a little smiley face at the end. And then I have a script here that's populating my variable with world, or passing in as an attribute, which we pass in from index.html, world as well. That's very simply how web components work. Obviously, it gets a little bit more complicated as you start to work with a real application. So Polymer is really easy to install. It's another good reason to work with it. It uses the Bower package manager. And basically, to get started with your app, all you have to do is these kind of 3 commands. For Bower init, Bower install Polymer, and then you install the standard components if you want to use them. You have the core components, and then you have the paper components. And obviously, you have to install the Bower packages first before you can get that. But it enables you to start a new web app very, very simply. All right, let me show the model real quick here. We're just working with a standard Salesforce opportunity model. If you've worked with Salesforce opportunities before, you are probably familiar with products. This is a product to table. You have opportunities. You have price book entries where your prices are kept. And you have your opportunity product, which is a junction object that goes between the 2. This is what we're working with, just the standard Salesforce opportunity product model. So let's show how we kind of access this. We have our server.js that's serving up the API that we can access. And in order to show the information, I have a list in this view here. And it's actually doing a template repeat tag that is querying a user service and a product service for the information that it needs. So let's go to product service first. And product service is actually really simple. It calls the products API. It's that API we just developed. And this makes it really simple to do AJAX calls to an API on a web server, because you just have to specify the API that you want, you specify how you want to handle it, and you populate an array with the JSON data that you're going to use in the application, the view layer itself. I also have the user service that's calling that user URL, the user endpoint that I showed a minute ago that showed my name and all that, and is passing that back to the application as well. So if I go back to my view layer, the product list, we can see here that I'm querying that, creating a user variable that I can use later in the app, and creating a products variable that I can use later in the app, and that has that JSON data that I'm working with. And then I'm looping. Polymer gives me the ability to create a template and loop through it, each product in the products variable that we've defined. I then have product.name, product.description that are being shown in a card element. And again, reusable, right? Each one of these, if I go back to my web app here, each one of these, bacon baby formula, bacon taco, bacon soap, each one of those is an individual component called product card. So I'm not recreating the same thing over and over again. I'm just using this product card component. Whoop, let's cancel it. And this shows the image, the title of it, and the amount. And a little button that I can, a little slider that I can click on to order different amounts. So how's this all set up in Heroku Connect? This is kind of the magic behind the scenes. This makes it really easy. I'm reading and writing data from my web app just to Postgres, and then I want that data to be coming from Salesforce and getting populated back into Salesforce. So I'll click on my Baconforce Heroku control panel here. And we'll take a look. I have a few things. First off, I have my Heroku Postgres plugin add-on for Heroku. If you haven't worked with Heroku before, it's really easy to add Postgres or any other add-on. You just click a button or this command line, you can add those add-ons in, and it magically shows up, and you can connect to it and start writing to your database. So Heroku Postgres is old news. It's been around for a long time. Many of you have probably used it. I'm using Redis in order to kind of manage, to do session management across multiple nodes. If you don't use some sort of session manager, database session manager, you end up with each node being kind of separated, and you log into one, and you're not logged into the other. So each one of those, sorry, not nodes, the dynos, the Heroku dynos, it manages the session across it. And then I can click on Heroku Connect here to show the setup. In Heroku Connect, you won't see in the Heroku add-ons list right now, but you can. It is GA, and you can call Heroku or contact Heroku to get set up with a Heroku Connect account. It's just not listed in the add-ons. So the first thing I'm going to notice is that I'm signed in to Salesforce here. If I have time, I can kind of show how that works, but it's really simple. It's basically just like logging into the app. You log in once using OAuth, and it just retains that session information and the refresh information so that it can keep connecting long term. But I can show the objects that I have mapped here. I'm mapping opportunity. I'm mapping opportunity line item, price book entry, and product 2, the ERD that I just showed. If I click on each of these, I can show that I'm actually just mapping fields. And this probably looks very familiar to anybody who's worked with any ETL tool, because that's pretty much exactly what it is. It's very much like setting up an ETL tool. I'm choosing which Salesforce fields I want synced to Postgres. I'm choosing which Postgres fields that I want synced back to Salesforce. So I'm going to sync over just the information that I need. This is an opportunity. I need the close date, because I'm going to write that actually. And I need the external ID that I'm going to use to be able to, when I create my opportunity in Postgres, I'm going to create a temporary ID that I can then create products and add on to that opportunity in Postgres before I send it back up. So I'm going to use an external ID to recreate those relationships in Salesforce. And then I have the name, of course, of the opportunity. The owner of the opportunity is going to be whoever logged in earlier on. The stage name, I'm actually just going to use that to write. I'm going to set it to closed every time. I'm not sure opportunities is necessarily the best object for Bacon ordering system, because you probably aren't going to be managing an opportunity sales cycle for Bacon, but hey, you might. And that's how you would set up your mapping for an object. And each one is kind of set up the same. I'm pulling down description for line items, opportunity ID, price book entry ID. And then I can actually show here some of these are read-write and some of them are write-only. So my opportunities are read-write. I'm going to bring down any opportunities that are already there, and I'm also going to push up information. But some of these are going to be read-only. I don't need to write to the product to table. It's a list of products. There's no reason for a web app, customer-facing web app to actually be changing the products. I'm just adding products to an opportunity. So I don't need to read them. I don't need to write them. I just need to read them. So those are a read-only sync. And then each of these two, I can show, how often I'm going to poll. And I can do a few different settings with regards to how frequently I want to synchronize Salesforce with Heroku. And there's a couple things you want to consider. You do have API limits, of course, with Salesforce. So do you want to set it up to poll every minute? Is that going to end up, going over your API limits if you're doing that frequently? You can actually even do updates in real time, but again, you have to consider your API limits as you're doing that. So for this particular app, I'm polling every 10 minutes and pushing that data back up to Salesforce. And you can see, I'm actually not sure if this is still logged in, but this is a Postgres kind of application just to browse Postgres on the server side. And you can see here, I have my Salesforce table that's been created, or sorry, database that's been created in Postgres. And I can see all of my tables here. The connection may have died. Yeah, it looks like it. But it looks like data. We've all seen data. And then when I place that order, it actually is going to show back up in Salesforce as a closed opportunity. So you can see here, this isn't the one that I placed a minute ago, although I could go back to it. Let's see, opportunities, all opportunities. Here, this is the one that I placed just a moment ago. You can see my total amount of Bacon purchases is $123, a little steep. And you can see that I added these products to that opportunity, my Bacon baby formula, my Bacon bandages, my Bacon soap, my Bacon taco. And my web app never actually communicated with Salesforce. It just communicated with Postgres through the API layer that I created. And Heroku Connect then managed that the data synchronization between Heroku and Salesforce for me. And I can show the order service as well. I forgot to show that. This is how I'm actually creating the order. I have the order API that's created. I then call an event, order success or order fired. And on the server side, when I create the order, what I'm going to do is do inserts of orders. I have a new opportunity that I create, insert into opportunity. I can select my price book. I can create my opportunity line items and my new opportunity line item. So basically, everything's interacting with Postgres, syncing up to Salesforce. So that's really it. Thank you for coming and for listening. Like I said, you can get the source at GitHub /Tom Gersick / let me bring up the URL if you guys are looking. /BaconForce. You can run the app yourself if you'd like at baconforce.herokuapp.com. And are there any questions? Use the mic. I probably can't. There's a mic right there, I think.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
In the case that you've shown, you actually are consuming communities licenses, right?
Yes.
How would this change in the case where you were not? So you would not want to do it?
Yeah, you could use a different IDP. So you could use ping identity. You have to have some identity provider. You probably don't want to write that layer yourself. So a good option might be ping identity or some other identity provider. You could do it yourself with Active Directory or something like that. You just need some sort of OAuth identity provider to be able to handle that. With this, yes, I'm using communities licenses. But you wouldn't have to. You could use any other identity provider that you wanted. You need to consume, obviously, one Salesforce license that can sync back and forth for Heroku Connect. Yeah.
Hi. If there is some error during sync up from Postgres to SFDC sync up, how will I get notified?
That's a good question. It does conflict kind of. Hang on. I was thinking there was conflict management in here somewhere. You do have logs that are shown if there's errors. You can see errors syncing to Salesforce. I appear to have a couple of errors here that have been created over time, not recently. I'm not sure if there's a notification system. That's a good question, but you can see the logs of whether you've had errors or not. I don't have the answer for if there's a way to get notified. Sorry. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.